All right, and we're back. Hello,
we
Zach.
are back. Hello, Dylan. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right today. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Right
I think
on.
that my camera might be messed up again, but who knows? I obviously this tech stuff I cannot figure out. But anyway, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah. It's another day.
Yeah.
Mostly okay. Yeah.
Mostly okay. So obviously, if you are tuning in here, you know who we are, or you don't, whatever. My name is Zach. This is Dylan. We are some nobodies, and what we do, we are a content creating, media generating group of individuals that like to just make up stuff. We have weird ideas, and we like to turn them into things. We have a movie in progress. We have a couple podcasts going on. We have a TV show, which you're watching. Another one, whatever.
Ideally.
Yeah, we also have great guests on that have also created some amazing things as well, and we'd like to get their input and make our process a little bit better. But this is called Talking Upstream, and what we do here is try to talk ourselves up to a streaming service, whether it is Peacock or Paramount Plus or Paravision Max or whatever it is we're trying to create. Either way, we just want to make up stuff. And yeah, so Dylan, do you want to talk about our guest today?
Yeah, so this week we are joined by Geoffrey D Calhoun. He is a screenwriter, podcaster. He wrote a book called The Successful Screenwriter. I'm going to bring him on. I think that's what it's called. He's doing something backstage. I'm going to have him on to correct me. Hello.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I swear I read your book.
Right. Yeah, I believe it. No, the guide for every screenwriter is the book. That's Successful Screenwriter is the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book for a second. Dylan got into the book. He is a big fan of different screenwriting techniques. One of the ones that we used to go by is Save the Cat. Is that correct, Dylan?
Save the Cat is generally what we fall back on for the show.
Now, how does your book relate to that style of progress?
Yeah. So Save the Cat is it's been about 20 years old now, and it's been the standard for a long time. But I felt the screenwriting structure could really use kind of an update. So I use an amalgamation of the greats and then include my own stuff and subplots as well. And I think that's the one thing like Save the Cat really never talks about is subplots, as well as none of the other really the huge books out there don't really kind of talk about subplots. And so that was my addition to the screenwriting craft. But I mean, I even break it down historically all the way from like Joseph Campbell's Heroes 2000 Faces to how we got to where we are now with structure.
Yeah, that was one of the things that Dylan brought up when talking about your book was the subplots. And it's something we try to throw into a lot of our stories because I think that it adds like a richness or a texture to a lot of stories. And on your podcast, though, The Successful Screenwriter, you do a lot of things. You interview people, but you also review movies and other things. Like, do you want to talk about your podcast for a second?
Yeah, so we have on Screenwriting Gurus. So I've been lucky enough to have Dave Trodier, Linda Seeger. I mean, just like greats of the field. And then on top of, Hollywood screenwriters, we had people on there that wrote like several popular films. I've had on Dave Made a Maze and like really popular like Psycho Gorman, stuff like that. So really popular stuff that's relevant nowadays. So with that on top of it, I found that I didn't want to just do another movie review because that's very popular. So what I do is I have on a guest, Christy Lee Lussier, and we analyze the films. So we break down the tricks that they're using. We break down how they're getting the character to sell to the audience and visual tricks they're using like subtext and things like that. And we'll break down the subplots. So we take more of an analysis approach, and we've had a good response from it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I was listening to it earlier, your last episode. Now, when it comes to screenwriting, now do you tend to have all of your stories have like some sort of like linear like thought thread, or is there always like something that you just inherently put in most of your stories? We'll get to why I asked that later on.
Sure. Everybody puts themselves in a story. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to put a part of yourself in a story, because story is a form of expression of the inner self. I mean, some people even take it spiritual, like it's how the soul goes on the paper, but like it's going to happen. I use theme as a through line for my main plot and my subplots. But when I'm brought onto a gig, say someone brings me on to fix their script, I will look through the material that they have and say, okay, what can I find? What can I connect to? And then that can help that kind of guide me through the rewrite.
Now, on the podcast, you don't only talk about movies. I see you've done episodes on like Fallout New Vegas and a few other podcasts and sort of things. Do you ever take considerations from other media into your screenplays, or do you find that it's pretty heavily segmented depending on what type of media you are creating?
So one of the goals for the podcast was to provide ample opportunities and areas of education of where writers can go, specifically screenwriters, because that's my tribe. These are the people I care about. These are the people that I love. So when I get out there and I'm looking for people to interview, I was like, okay, let's talk about writing for YouTube. I'll have something like that coming up soon, and eventually I'll talk about like going on Upwork and getting side gigs. But I go, okay, Fallout New Vegas, I love that. Writing a video game, it's a brilliant video game. It's one of my favorites, and I know screenwriters can get into that field. Can I get that writer? And so then I get lucky enough to get him. I bring him on, and he's just a fountain of knowledge. And I always have the writers talk about their origin stories, because I want the listeners to hear how they found success, because it might be a way for them to do it as well.
Now, what about yourself? What kind of trajectory have you had in your kind of like screenwriting success then?
Oh my gosh, like the longest, most painful.
Yeah.
Like it was tough, man. I mean, 15 years of it. I'm a dyslexic dude from Detroit. So, I mean, I started out on the bottom, no connections. Ended up getting into screenwriting on a bet and just loved it. And then started writing on my own. And then one day entered a contest and ended up hitting the quarters first time. And it was a bigger contest. It was Scriptapalooza. And I mean, that was the first time I'd ever entered anything. So then started refining the practice and really educating. I'm an autodidact, so I'm self-taught, and I found every mentor I could, every seminar I could go to. I've got tons of books behind me. Just really becoming a student of this craft and this art. And really perfecting it. And then one day I was at a festival, and it wasn't really digging the movie. So I sat outside and I started fixing a director's script. And the next thing you know, I was like holding court, and people were asking me to fix their stuff. And then I ended up working with a German actress in London, and helped her kind of break a story. And she started crying because the story helped her break was about a woman who finds her daughter and comes to terms with it. And she had lost her daughter. And once that happened, I started realizing, okay, this is something I can really do. And it just kind of burst from there.
Now, looking over your Wikipedia page, and congrats on that.
Okay. Thank you.
That was one of my accomplishments that I was like, I just want a Wikipedia page. And then the other day I saw that yours popped up. And I'm like, oh man, that's cool. But you have, obviously written a bunch of things. You've produced, you have acted, you have directed, you have a podcast, you're a writer. Of all the mediums that are out there to create content, which one is your favorite?
I love writing. I mean, screenwriting is my passion. It's my love. I mean, one day I think I could get more into directing. Producing, I kind of sort of dip my toes in a little bit here and there, but it's never everything I pursue. I usually just kind of like fall into it. But I love when a client comes to me and they say, I have a script, it is not working, we're shooting in a month, can you help me? And then like I feel like I get hit by lightning. I just love this. I get like, oh man, the worse the better. You know, like how do I make this thing work and really help this person and save this project? Like I love that. So yeah, that's definitely my passion.
Yeah, that's great. And your podcast is actually on a pretty great network as well. Do you want to talk about how that network found you or vice versa?
I mean, you know, indie film hustle is amazing, right? I'm a fan of the show. Alex Ferrari is just an incredibly generous guy, talented, really understands the business of filmmaking. He's savvy. And we just kind of fell into it one day. I mean, it started when I had pitched him my book and asked if I could be on his show, and then he read the book and was like, "Come on!" So I came on the show, and the episode I was on was kind of popular, had a lot of hits, which was cool, and then just kind of started that relationship. And then I said, yeah, I've got this other podcast I'm doing, but I'm struggling. Do you have any pointers? And then he really helped me refine it and create a new direction and brand it properly. And then from there, the show was doing okay. And he's like, well, what do you think about coming on the network? And I was like, you had me at hello. I mean, it's like, I didn't even have to think twice about it. Of course. And so, yeah, I was just so blessed to be on that network and part of that community.
Yeah, when we found out that we were going to have you on the show, I started listening to your podcast, and then that's when I found out about the network. I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. And then I even asked Alex to be on our show, which I'm still waiting to hear back on that.
Oh yeah, well he's so busy. I'm sure he'd be. You know, I can't speak for him, but he's incredibly busy guy.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, no, we did actually ask him, but I was kidding about like waiting, for a response. Now, when Dylan and I are writing, a script or we're working out some stories, we tend to revert back to some other books and kind of look back and like, oh, we should really put this in here. Do you ever find that you like open your own book and kind of go back and like, oh yeah, that's right, that was actually a pretty good a bit of information?
It's super embarrassing to say yes to this, but yeah, I've totally read my own book like several times. It's like sometimes I really be like, who wrote this? Yeah, oh yeah, this guy, it's pretty good.
Gotta be your own biggest fan.
It's hilarious. Yeah, but I have other friends that are like, they're doing really well in the industry, and like my book is on their desk, and like it's one of the first things they grab. And to me, that's a surprise. I mean, there's colleges that have adopted it or put it on their must-read list. It was just ranked as number two of the top 100 books of all time for screenwriting by the Book Authority. So like all this stuff happens, and like none of it sinks in. Because I'm just like a dude doing a thing. You know what I mean? And but no, yeah, I think the book set does exactly what it's supposed to do. Is it's a quick reference guide, so it's just easy to pick up.
I had that thought when I was going through it. I skimmed it at first and I read a few of the sections. Like the subplot stuff is more in depth than I think any other book I've seen on screenwriting.
Thank you.
And the way you communicate just the idea of the project and how you should handle this is very conversational, which screenwriters, I've noticed when they're writing about the art of screenwriting, tend to elevate it. They try to make it lofty, and you're very much like, don't use cut to. You'll be embarrassed. Was a lot of that, you never went to film school or anything? No. A lot of this is just kind of like stuff that you taught yourself, including like kind of emphasis on the subplot stuff, which I was really surprised at how in depth you went into it.
So I'll explain where this process came from if you want to hear about it. All right. Sure. So I was contacted by a film school in Ghana, and they said, we want to teach our film students how to write a screenplay. And they had heard about me. So they said, hey, would you fly down to Ghana and teach our students? Because Nigeria has a filmmaking community called Nollywood. It's very popular. It actually draws some income. Mm-hmm. And so I think Ghana was they're like a little jealous. They're like, well, we want that. We want that coming to Ghana. So would you come down? I said, absolutely. But I have to create a screenwriting program. And I was only going to be down there for like 2 weeks. So I wasn't going to have a lot of time, so I wanted to create a quick, efficient course for screenwriting for these students in Ghana. So I created it, and it all kind of fell through. So I didn't end up going. But I had all this material, and I started realizing, well, I think I could make this a book. And so then how do I make this into a book that I would want to read? Because this is, so I was like, well, there is no all-encompassing reference guide on screenwriting. So I thought, well, so I'm going to write it. So I wrote it, so I wrote the book that I always wanted to read that I could never find, so that you don't have to have a dozen books on screenwriting. Because the one thing with screenwriting books is everybody kind of specializes in a particular aspect of it. And so when I was pitching this book to publishers, I said, hey, this is an all-encompassing book. Well, they said, well, if you just did a subplot book, that's all we want. And they said, that's all that the market wants. And I'd be like, well, I am the market. This is the book that I want. So I'm just going to make this book a bestseller then. So I just did it on my own. And it happened, which is cool. So subplots for me is a big deal because, I run WeFixYourScript.com, and I have to be able to break down scripts and find out why they're not working in order to help a client or mentor student. And so discovering subplots was key for that. And then really finding out where subplots align with the main plot was essential. And so, through my own studies and my own research, I was able to figure that out and break it down in a way that nobody has really done before. So for me, as somebody who loves the craft, I'm very honored to be able to add to it.
Now, it seems like a lot of your projects now are other people's scripts that you are like kind of tweaking and working on and help fixing. Do you have a lot of time now for your own just original creations?
If I have a story in me that is burning, yes. Like I did write a spec script that right now is getting looked at in possible production, and things like. So when I feel there is something in there I got to get out, yeah, I will. I just like writing and I like working. So I don't have to be that guy that can only write on spec and create my own thing. I'm happy to be part of other projects and keep working as a writer because I know the value that I can add to a project.
Now, one of the things that Dylan and I, well, more Dylan than myself, because he's the writer of the group. I just talk a whole lot. But when we were working on our first real script to get directed, the notes that he was getting was that he was writing too novelistic. And it was because he is a novel writer and working towards that. Does your brain work in a novelistic storytelling sense, or do you now think of it in a screenplay sense?
No, I don't. So here's the thing about being dyslexic. It's a superpower if you're a screenwriter, because I think in pictures. I don't think in words. I don't think in dialogue. So when I visualize or I think about something, I see it. So translating that into a screenplay is quite easy for me. If you're a novelist, you're probably thinking more as a novelist does. So it's a bit more of a challenge to adapt that into a visual medium that is written, such as screenwriting.
Yeah, I think it's something that he and I are both challenged with. As a storyteller, I think that I speak novelistically, and he writes that way. So when we worked with our first director and cinematographer, they were a little bit hard on our first script. It's like, okay, you got to change a lot of this.
Succinct was the word that was thrown around.
Concise. Succinct, yeah.
So the trick there is to just really work on thinking visually, and then when it comes to writing your action blocks, cutting them down, forcing yourself to cut your action description down to 4 lines. Will force you out of that novelistic expression. And then also remembering that everything has to be filmable. So if you're saying the way a character is feeling in their head, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their thoughts are because we can't see it. We can't shoot it.
Yeah, and that was the hard part for us because our first script was about a body swap, so a lot of it was an internal struggle.
Oh no! That would be super tough.
Yeah, it read well, and then our script, our director was like, "This is a beautiful story, but we got to work on this a little bit." So that was the biggest, and we would have loved your book then because I wish we'd done it because it would have helped. It would have helped out a lot of weird text messages.
I texted Zach almost word for word today, where I'm like, "Yeah, I wish I had read this before we wrote Give Me Back."
Yeah. And now it's going to help us out a lot.
Yeah. Speaking kind of genre film, like your filmography looks like it has a fair amount of like supernatural like stuff like that. Do you kind of gravitate towards that, or is that just what you've kind of fallen into?
Yeah, I just go where work takes me. So if a horror guy needs help and they're shooting it, I just take the gig. Because I can write anything. I don't try to brand myself into one genre. I know that's very popular with indie writers, and they like to brand themselves. And I think what happens when you brand yourself in a particular genre is you can get a little bit of work quickly. But I think over a long career, it becomes harder to transition into other genres. So I've done some paranormal stuff and things like that. But I mean, I can write drama, I can write comedy. It's all about the approach that I can bring to it.
Is there a particular style or genre that you find you have difficulty kind of getting your head around? Or do you like to just kind of tackle things as best you can?
You know, I've never attempted a historical, so I think a historical would probably be a little bit more difficult for me, especially if I had to write within that period language.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would require a lot more research. I'd have to be picking a lot more brains from some experts in order to not throw a dude in there. It was like the 1800s.
Is there a particular era you would be interested in doing? Just out of curiosity?
A particular era I would want to write. Oh, I have no idea, dude.
It's a targeted question.
Yeah, I think, I trained in the martial arts for a long time. So I would say ancient Japan would be pretty fun to take a crack at.
Wow.
Yeah, we find that when we talk to screenwriters, and when I met you was on Jeff Dwoskin's show, and you went into this a little bit, where it's hard to watch a film while you're not studying a film, because as a writer, you can start seeing all the cracks. Yeah. Do you find that when you do watch a film, that certain genres tend to gravitate towards you more because you can fall into them easier?
I'm a super geek, guys. I mean, so sci-fi. Even bad sci-fi movies, I give it the benefit of the doubt. When I really shouldn't. Yeah. So I mean, I love sci-fi, but I also like sci-fi because it can be more intellectual, not just because you have explosions. Like I love explosions, but like sci-fi can really have, you can talk about social dilemmas. You can talk about inequality. You can talk about political stuff. You can really dive into that in sci-fi in a safe way because it's just removed enough from our reality that you can explore it. So I do like that about sci-fi as well. Things like Gattaca or The Fountain. Like kind of heady stuff where you can even get into like Brazil. I mean, like movies like that can really talk about things that we should be hearing, that should be challenging us.
When writing your original content, for me, I get a very weird idea of a movie that I've never seen before. And then that's where my story starts. It's like, this is a stupid idea. How do I make this into something? And I think sometimes, I'm not really sure, but maybe Dylan has the idea where it's like, here's a person or a characterization of someone, that's where a story. How do your stories start? Or is it an idea, or is it like a character-driven thing, or is it just kind of all over the place?
Mostly I try and look at market-wise. I'll look, okay, what's going on market-wise? What can I create that's original? And I'll give you an example. So like zombies were huge, and right when zombies first started to take off, I knew if I wrote something zombie wise, if it did sell, I'd have a couple of years still of zombies to be able to make it on the market. So I thought about that. You don't want to come into a popular genre at the end of its lifespan. You don't want to come into it at the middle. You want to get into it right before it starts to break. So if it does sell, you have time for it to shoot and then make it on screen and be successful. So I looked at like zombies when zombies first started, and I was okay, what hasn't been done with zombies? And I thought, okay, hipster zombies was pretty crazy. That's a wild thing. Let's look at that, So I started developing Hipster Z about these interdimensional zombie that goes into the South and bites a guy and named Bojack, and then Bojack becomes a hipster zombie who craves flesh. He craves meat of man, of people, because people are non-GMO, they're gluten-free. There's no allergens, right? People are free range, right? So, and then he starts to like grow the goatee and he wears the hipster stuff, but he's dead. And so then that's done. So then the whole town starts becoming hipster zombies. And then the people that are trying to fight them off are covering themselves in like jelly donuts, like Slim Jims and all kinds of crazy food, soda. so that the hipster zombies like, ugh, like they don't want to eat them because they're covered in the grime, right? So that was kind of the idea I had. I was like, okay, how do I make this funny? How do I make this scary? And how do I get this out there? And so I did it, and it was successful. Like anybody who's read it really loved it. It had a little bit of heat for a minute. And so that's kind of the direction I come from, is what's going on? How can I do it different? How can I do it unique? And then how do I put my little twist on it?
Yeah, that actually sounds like a really cool story. I would watch that. Now, speaking of trying to make things sound current or trying to make things sound relevant, when trying to write for different, I guess, races or sexes, and trying to keep inclusivity as far as in a story, how, as a screenwriter, what are some tools that you use to make sure that every person sounds different?
So I'll do an entire. Okay, this is a really good question. So I wrote like an In the Woods horror that has been optioned a few times, and it's looking good. But it was written in a demographic of 18 or 16 to like 20, 24 demographic. I'm not that old. I'm not that young. I'm 42. I don't know how kids talk nowadays. So in knowing that and being a writer, but I want it to be authentic. So I went to the mall and I found a store. This is back when you could go to the mall. and I found it. So pre-COVID, I found a store where young people would go and shop and buy clothes. And I walked in there. I said, "Hey, is there a manager around?" Manager walks out. She's like 19, 20 years old. I was like, perfect. I said, "Hi, I'm a screenwriter. Would you mind if I interview you real quick to just kind of learn how you speak and then ask you kind of specific mannerisms and style of colloquialisms that you use?" Then after a minute, she was like, "Yeah, because if you tell somebody you're a screenwriter, you get access. Like you're going to go anywhere you want to go."
You talked about that.
Yeah. So I interviewed her for about half hour or so, and I had my notebook, wrote everything down. And then I went through and I did rewrites and redrafts. But the cool thing, like with a way I do a rewrite, is I'll do a rewrite of one character's specific dialogue all the way through, and I won't touch anything else. And then I'll do another draft of another character's dialogue all the way through, making it totally consistent.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we should start doing that.
Yeah,
because one thing is.
Well, we're allowed to go outside and talk to people again, almost.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah,
there you
I can't wait to go back to a mall and start hanging out in kids' stores.
Yeah, look, it wasn't like that. Okay?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, because one thing that's very important to Dylan and I when writing is inclusivity. But the weird thing is, like, our brains are just naturally designed to see most people as just white men. So we'll write a story and it's like, okay, he's going to do this and then he's going to go over to here. And then it's like, wait, no, I don't want to tell this story from a white man point of view. So we definitely struggle with that. How important is that in your storytelling to make sure that there are people of color or, just inclusivity in general? Or is it more about the story and let other people deal with that?
I think inclusivity and representation is important. I think you have to be authentic. That's the key. If I'm going to write a story about an Asian American, I better really understand everything about that culture and really write it and be authentic to that culture. And if I can't do that, I shouldn't be touching the story. Personally, I mean, that's my opinion. Now, writing it as like a white guy being a white guy or a cis male being a cis male, writing from that perspective, of course you are, because that's what you know, right?
Yeah.
So it comes down to how are you writing your characters? Now, if they are racial specific, like you have to have a person of color or a trans or LGBT community in your script because it adds to the script and it adds to the story, great. If you're throwing it in just to throw it in, that's not the right decision. Like, it needs to add to the story, it needs to add to the character. Otherwise, when it comes to production, they'll decide to put somebody in. That's fine. But the other thing is I don't write down a specific race for a character most of the time. So when I create a character, and that character is that character. And if you read my script and you say it's full of all white men, then you're the one that's biased, because I'm not describing all white men. I'm not describing all white anything. If I have a character that's gay, it is written into the character, right? It's not stereotypical. If I need an Asian American, it is written into the character for purpose, for deliberate reasons. And so I think approaching it that way might help you guys.
Yeah, I think that's very good information. Wow. Thank you very much. Now, hopping back to your podcast.
Okay.
Now, the concept of our podcast here is to talk ourselves up to a streaming service. Now, going over your podcast where you analyze and break things down, is there a pinnacle to what you're trying to do, or is it just grabbing different projects and just breaking them apart?
It's all to help writers. I view myself as a screenwriter, of course, but I view myself as a mentor. I view myself as a screenwriting mentor. So when I go through and I analyze scripts, I'm teaching you how I see a movie. And so doing that, I'm hoping it kind of is a key to unlock the door to some of the secrets and tricks of filmmaking. And so that's 100% the goal. I don't care who it impresses. I don't care if anybody, notices it or not. I'm doing it for the one person out there. I'm doing it out there for Zach, who watches the episode and he picks up a trick, and then he can put that in his toolbox. And then I've helped him, and so helping somebody, I've added to this world. I've made it a slightly better place, and that's the most I can ever hope for. If anything else comes from it, great.
No, I love it, and I'm learning a lot, so I like it. It's actually making me hate movies more, so I definitely appreciate that.
That's not the goal.
It's not making me hate movies more, but I'm much more aware of, like, wow, how many takes did that take when I'm watching an actual movie? It's interesting to really now that we've worked with people making a movie, where I can be like, oh God, the setup for this must have taken like 4 hours.
Well, and it depends on the filmmaker. I mean, James Gunn is notorious on what is that film with the creepy crawlers? Slither. And Slither, he made Michael, what's his name? Walk through a door 84 times.
Yeah.
That's just walking through a door.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you can only imagine. Yeah, it's going to just take all day to do just a brief scene. But, well.
Yeah. Like Dylan said, when we filmed our movie, I didn't realize that this very little scene that maybe might be 20 seconds of our film took us 6 hours in the ice cold in a garage. I didn't realize that I had to talk over so many angles. And, it was so incredible. Now, as a screenwriter, have you ever seen a project that you wrote that really had nothing to do with the production of it?
I'm trying to understand that question. So did I write something that they took from me and changed completely?
Or just made without you knowing how they made it?
No, I haven't run into that problem yet, because when I come onto a project, I'm pretty key to how they develop it. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had anything come into my hands and then be taken out and then been reworked to where I completely don't see it. I have been brought on to gigs before where they were in trouble and I fixed the script for them, and then they took the script and their egos were offended and then they destroyed the script. But that's not on me. That usually comes down to indie filmmaker that is just really in love with their script and maybe doesn't have a great grasp on filmmaking yet. So then I come in and I show them, okay, this is how it should go, and they don't want that. So, vanity projects can be like that as well, when somebody is trying to do their own life story via the room, and then they bring someone like me on to make it make sense, and then I do that, but then they don't like the direction it goes. So
yeah, because when we when we had our script and we had it with the director and we were in a couple locations, she was like, "This is how I see it," and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting," because I didn't see it like that at all, but that does make sense now. So it is interesting in that process, watching a visionary change, kind of words, because it was our project and we see it, but then somebody, Savannah, just read it and then had her vision at it. So it is cool seeing the correlation of those two things.
I agree. That's the beauty of collaboration. I mean, I've seen it with line reads. So I've written scripts, and then the actors have read the lines way different than how I wrote it in my head. And sometimes it's really cool, like, oh wow, that's a really neat inflection. And other times you're like, no, that's not how I wrote it. But it's not up to you. It's up to the actor, and it's up to the director.
Yeah. So you kind of have to go into it from different points of view at all times, like seeing it as a director, seeing it as a scriptwriter, seeing it as the person in the story. So
see it as a producer too.
Yeah,
really look at it. Yeah, really look at it as a producer.
Yeah, since in this project on Talking Upstream, we pitch a lot of weird ideas to people that make movies. And a lot of times recently, for some reason, people are like, well, your idea is cool, but it's not even approachable from filming. So let's not even go into that.
Yeah,
I'm like, weird. Well, it's just an idea. And it's cool seeing like different people's perspective and how they even go into an idea.
If you guys have a second, I just want to mention, like, you can have what you feel is a great script, and then a producer can get it, and it only takes like one or two things to be off about the script, and they pass on it. I think a lot of indie screenwriters think like, this is a really great script, and then the producer will read it, and then maybe they'll give me some notes, and I'm happy to make the changes, and then maybe we can move forward. But from the producer's perspective, they see a great script, or they see a good script, they're not going to bother trying to give you notes to change it. They're just going to pass. It's got to be like a pretty amazing script for them to want to give you notes, to be willing to make changes for the script, because for them it's an investment.
Savannah, our director, gave us pretty impressive notes, which is cool, especially for an 11 minute, which I guess is not that great of a thing, but it's an 11-minute short that we wrote. And everyone, even she got a cinematographer and she got an editor involved,
right?
And they liked the script, so but they definitely had some notes. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's very similar to advice I got when I was sending my novel around, where it's like, you're just as likely to get nobody's going to give you notes on this. I mean, a novel is more of an investment, but it's like, even the mood of the agent could have been just like someone got their coffee to them lukewarm that morning, and they're just like, I'm not doing the first one across the desk, something like that.
It's possible. I mean, I was known for querying over 1,000 agents and producers in LA at one point when I had first started. So I can understand rejection.
No wonder your book is so harsh on querying.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. I think querying is the equivalent of pulling an arm on a slot machine. It's that's all it is. It's 20 years ago, sure, you could query and maybe get somebody on the line, but nowadays with so many screenwriters out there and querying, nobody's doing it. It's better to create your network and start impressing people with your skill set and then grabbing work that way.
Now, as a writer, do you have a story that you've been working on for a long time that you just have like a hard time letting go, or just saying that this is a finished idea?
Well, I just finished it. I had written a script that went from like LA to London and won a bunch of awards. And that was kind of like my calling card script. And I had been working on it and tweaking it. And I'd keep wondering, like, why do people like this? And then I would go through and I would tweak it. And I finally got it to the point now where I feel like it's, this is ready to get made. It's been optioned a few times. And I think that was probably the one. But yeah, I finally got that. Broke it to where I was like, this is it. This is what it needs to be.
Yeah, that's interesting, because people always say like your first story takes you a long time to get going for you to say, okay, I'm done with this one. But then after that, it kind of just goes a little bit faster and a little bit faster. Do you find that to be true, or is it really just story dependent?
No, I think learning how to write is a muscle you have to exercise. I mean, when I first started writing, it took me all day to write one page. Like literally, I would sit down and be like, okay, today I write whatever.
Mhm.
I'm going to write page, whatever, and then write that. And then at the end of the day, like I wrote the page, and it's silly if I think about it now, but nowadays I can bang out 20 plus pages easily. So it's just, it comes down to just getting better and practicing at it.
Now, do you have like a page limit that you try to hit to every day? Do you have like certain daily goals or weekly goals as a writer?
It's no, I mean, I'll just sit down and write, I mean, today I'll write for 8 hours, tomorrow I'll write for 12. Like I set a time limit.
Okay.
And then I'll just write towards that time limit. And so that'll be it. So, I'll write from, today it's 8 to 6, tomorrow 9 to 5, or 12 to 12. I mean, whatever. And I'll set it and then I'll keep going. And then my body will tell me when I'm done because my brain goes numb.
I've been there before.
Yeah. I feel you.
Dylan, do you have any more questions?
Do you have a preferred just platform to write on? Do you use like are you a Final Draft person? Are you No?
No.
All right.
I use Writer Duet. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
I love Writer Duet. It's so good to use if you have a co-writer or a collaborator, or like as somebody who has like students. I use Writer Duet because I'll log into a student's script and then I can show them how to fix it. And for me, that's just speaks volumes. Plus, they update it yearly, and the cost doesn't change, so you don't have to spend out the wazoo for a new software every year.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone into a project working with a partner? I know that you take over some. Oh, you have? Okay. Do you have any words of advice for teams that work together going into a project?
Yeah, I got a bunch of them in the book.
Yeah. He talks about co-writing in there.
Yeah. So collaborating is key. One thing I think you need to do as a collaborator is have a contract. There's a basic collaborator contract you can sign on from the WGA. Actually, you could download it. And by having a contract, I know it sounds like ridiculous, but what it is it sets the tone for the working relationship that you have. And it defines how much each person is going to make. So like I have a very good friend, and we have both worked on projects together, projects I've started, projects she started. And then on her project, she's like, I got to do 60%. Okay, that's fine. That means you have final say in whatever. This is good. I'm glad I know that, so that I'm not going to push overly hard for any kind of changes. I just know I'm going to come on and I'm going to do, add my voice and value to your project, but I'm not going to be like, no, and then have like the argument there. It's like, oh, okay, this is your baby. So I think my one big advice would be do the contract. Outside of that, I have several other tips in the book.
Yeah. So we definitely suggest reading the book. Actually, do you want to pitch where people can find your book real fast?
Oh, the Guide for Every Screenwriter is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I think Target sells it online. So, I mean, it's everywhere. We have, if you go to the successfulscreenwriter.com, you can download an abridged version as a free PDF right off there, just by signing up for a newsletter as well.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Dylan, do you have any more questions for Mr. Calhoun before we get into what we do here?
No, I think we're good. Let's move on.
Okay, so please, everyone, go pick up the Guide to Every Screenwriter. Also, check out the Successful Screenwriter podcast. It is an amazingly done podcast, very in-depth. We do a movie review show called The Real Boys. It's like that, but with intelligent people that know what they're talking about and don't just hate, too much stuff. So please go check out Mr. Geoffrey Calhoun and all of his crazy stuff. Mr. Calhoun, okay, so now what we do, Dylan and we exchange a lot of weird text messages throughout the week of very stupid ideas that I think should be made to movies, and he ignores them, rightfully so, because most of my ideas are dumb. And we used to just fight over what we should work on, but now we get our guests on the show to do that. So if it's okay with you, we're going to pitch a couple ideas to you, and you're going to tell us which one you think we should just work on today, because we have a little extra time. So my idea today that I would like to work on, I had this weird idea of another species on this planet that for some reason was overlooked or whatever, but now once we start looking at them, they have evolved to be the apex predator. They can actually like fight humans, and we're going to have to take on something else that is now at the apex level of predatorship. I think, and Dylan told me that I should turn this into thing at the end, the twist at the end. But at the end, it's going to turn out that aliens have forced evolution to this species to fight humans. So we're calling this project Alien Uplift, and it is about a species that gets to the height of humans and can fight/kill them, and now we have something to worry about.
Okay.
And I don't have any idea what Dylan's gonna pitch.
This one, I don't know where this idea came from. I think it's just that these Ancestry websites are getting so popular now, and I'm getting a lot of advertisements for them. But I had this idea that there are two kids in high school, they're seniors, and they're about to go out into the world. And they both decide, let's do an ancestry test, 23andMe equivalent, whatever name you give it. And one of them gets back a pretty standard result, and the other one gets back a result that indicates that they are either N/A, or it's like genetic material that is equivalent to like someone who currently already exists. Like they're either like a clone or something like that. They get back something that requires them kind of like go on this to find out exactly what is the secret behind their ancestry. And for some reason, the test that they take is what kind of instigates that story. I'm seeing it as like, I don't know what to call it, anomalous ancestor anomaly or something like that. But I'm seeing it as like you find out mysteriously on like the day of your graduation that you're actually a clone of someone.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Is it a human anomaly, or is it like they have part animal or part alien? Is it just
part reptilian or something like that?
Is it? Yeah, just we don't know. Just some kind of abnormality.
And then you find out that their family are aliens or something like that. That's possible.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, something like that. Something sci-fi or equivalent.
Okay. All right. Can I press you guys on these?
Yeah, please.
Okay, because I think what happens is you guys go for the concept stage, but I actually like to find thematically what you want to say with it.
Sure.
Ooh. Okay.
So thematically with Alien Uplift, I got to razz you on the name because it sounds like a dramedy.
That was Dylan's name, by the way. But yeah, you're right.
Alien, I love it. All right, so
dramedy.
So
it's like, come on, get back in there, Tiger.
Yeah, you got this. Come on,
hang in there, baby.
All right,
Alien rom-com.
Don't let that human get away. Go eat him. All right, so
that's funny.
What are you trying to say with Alien Uplift? What is your theme?
So my problem with the world is that humans are we're too spacious. We're too ignorant to the just every other species. So I would like the idea of humans having to be scared when leaving their house. I don't know how else this can happen. So I thought earlier that if an alien would just kind of saw humans like, oh, these guys suck. And then they forced evolution on, say, the platypus, and then made some other species just be like, look, we can kill humans. And then there's a battle.
Okay. All right. So it's about excessive consumerism and how people have had to, and it's about forcing people to stop expanding on destroying the planet, that type of a thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What do you got, Dylan? What's your theme?
Well, when you graduate from high school, you're entering the wider world, and a lot of things tend to come to light about yourself when you have to like go to college and you're living kind of on your own. You have less of a safety net, and then it's already uncomfortable. And then you combine that with like dark family secret.
Okay.
And you have to mesh these two crises of identity together at a time where you are already kind of vulnerable.
So I like that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I find concept is fun, but theme is important. And so theme is, how do we create a story that is going to appeal to people in a broad umbrella through a people that have experienced, the human condition, the human experience. So when I think about self-identity, who am I? Everybody's gone through that. Everybody's wanted to kind of figure out who they are, who are they according to who their parents believe they are, who are they according to what society believes they are, and then eventually deciding who they want to be, right? I like that. So I think we would go with that one. Alien Uplift, I think, is fun. I think thematically it kind of works if we're in a Western society. But if we're not in a Western society, I think then it might struggle a little bit trying to capture people that haven't had to live in excess.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
yeah.
I would
Very
say
good note.
Ancestor Anomaly.
I love it. I love it. All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Calhoun. Okay, so for the next little bit of time, we're going to go over whatever we're going to call this thing, which is ancestor abnormality or anomaly.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Who knows?
Ancestor Uplift.
No, we're not doing rom-coms today, especially not for old people.
You have to get the ghost of your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather back with the ghost of your great-great-great-great-grandmother.
No, I don't.
That's
like
a
that.
future.
I don't like that at all.
All right.
Okay, so before we get into this, a couple people we want to thank. Number one, Pod TV. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to chat with some people that really teach us some stuff, and people that we look up to and can learn a lot from. Where Mr. Calhoun is sitting is where Dylan and I want to sit. So thank you very much for giving us a platform where we can do that. Thank you to Scott Curtis and Behind the Bits, was a great podcast. If you are into interviews of comedians, Behind the Bits is great. It's not just comedy, it's what happens behind the comedy, why comedy is funny, and the sadness that goes into that. Jeff Dwoskin and all of his shows, from Crossing the Streams to Live Detroit, thank you very much. You're a great dude, and go check out all of his stuff. Some East Coast friends, we have Sarah Takacic and Tanya Sheck, and also you have what is the other one? Dylan,
you say Listen Rap?
Yeah, Listen Rap, the one that's on Instagram. Sorry about that. That's funny. So Listener app. If you go to Instagram at the greatest podcast app, I got so crazy that I kicked over 2 different tripods, which is terrifying. So I'm very sorry about that. But yeah, Instagram at the greatest podcast app. Those guys have a really cool thing where you can actually look at the words instead of hearing the words, because I mumble and slur, and Dylan talks under his breath, and it's cool when I go back to listen to our episodes and actually reading those little snide comments that he throws in there, which is always great. And I save them and I text him, and he doesn't respond like everything else. But anyway,
I put them all on a Google Doc.
Yes. So thank you guys very much. And like I said earlier, please go check out Mr. Calhoun and all of his great stuff. You have The Guide to Every Screenwriter, a great book that we are now going to throw into our rotation to make us have way better stories and subplots. But all right, so let's get into this thing real fast, Dylan. So Ancestry Anomaly.
Yeah. So I was seeing
Abnormality.
Whichever you like.
Whatever.
I was seeing it as taking place in the final few weeks of high school for these kids. They might be going to different schools. They've been friends for a long time, grew apart, grew back together. They take an ancestry test. One of them gets a result that is clearly not a mistake, or just it's something that has to kick off them going after this information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't have much beyond that. So.
No, I like that. Mr. Calhoun, when you start having a story and you really want to break this down, do you tend, and obviously I know that I can read your book and get all this information, so I'm just going to ask you quickly.
I'll just save you from reading the book.
I'm definitely going to read the rest of it. Dylan is still reading it. But when starting a concept like this, do you tend to always work in a 3-arc structure, or do you try to find what the story is and let the structure itself work?
I outline.
So
but before that, I do a what I call the script pyramid. So I create, with the bottom level is concept, then I create theme, then I layer in a central character, because your central character is your living embodiment of your theme. And then from central characters, I create supporting characters, because your supporting characters express the antithesis or thesis of your theme. So I develop those, and then I look at building into an outline.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so what we would work on here is the bottom, which is the concept, which we already kind of roughly have.
Yeah,
and now we have the theme, which is obviously very rough, but we still have that, and a central character. Now, one thing that we talk to a lot of our guests about is the idea of the window character, which is putting somebody into this new world or making. Usually, when you're telling a story, there are rules that are set to this world or this story. And the concept of the window character is someone who is new to this specific world. So now how do you feel about that character? The idea of that character?
I don't have a problem with that. POV character is fine. So, I mean, the boys do it. The boys do it quite well. With Jack Quaid's character comes in and he doesn't understand the world, and then he's brought into the world by Butcher. I think it's fine to do that as long as you're using that character and making him important to the main conflict, which in the boys they did that, right? So by having the inciting incident, is this a show or a feature that we're talking about?
We haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah,
slightly important.
I was imagining a feature.
Yeah, that kind of comes like right around now, which is when we're trying to figure out what the story we're trying to tell. But it seems like an isolated story, not something that we can continue. I don't think. So it seems like it's
expand pretty dramatically on like what's happening.
Yeah, true.
The point is moot then, because the central character is going to be your POV character, because they're going to be brought into the world anyway through the inciting incident. So it's totally fine.
Cool. All right. So then our central character is the one who's going to learn about their 23andMe or whatever it is that they're doing. Now, Dylan, you said that this is a high school senior, correct?
Yeah. So about 18 or so.
All right, cool. And they take this this test about their ancestry because just as a project, or is there a reason for that, or that just happens?
I don't know if it's too played out to have them be adopted, and he's like, I'm going to figure out what's going on. And then his friend is like, I'm going to do that too. You know, as a show of support, I'm going to find out where my family comes from. And then he has to confront maybe the adoptive parents or something. Or if that is part of the strangeness where he believes that these people are his actual parents. I figured, you know, kids are curious. You're leaving high school. And it's like, yeah, going forward, I want to kind of know where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And what did you think was the most interesting as far as what they can find in this test? That it is a clone somehow, or that it is something that is just unknown?
I think the way to make it not seem contrived, because I don't think these tests are designed to pick up non-human DNA. I think it's for them to get a result that is like, this result's already in the database, and it's maybe it's like a famous like a famous person of some sort, like it's their clone of someone who is like high profile. Go for it.
Yeah, I have ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know the process here, if I'm allowed to pop in, or
please
sit here and look pretty. Okay, I would recommend using the clone the DNA test as an opportunity to create empathy for the character, right? Mm-hmm. So working in layers there. Don't just use it as an excuse to kick off the story, but let's use every bit of the story to develop character, develop conflict, develop story. So if we have a kid who's living at home, who maybe doesn't have a dad, maybe doesn't have a mom, whichever parent we want to go with, who is very sick, and he has to take care of them, that is a character that we will immediately understand and empathize with, because this is a kid who's trying to be a kid, but at the same time having the responsibilities of an adult. Now, if you want to layer in that he's a high school senior and trying to get great grades on top of taking care of a parent, even better. Now, if the mother is sick for unknown reasons and no one can diagnose it, but he's a really smart kid, so that he thinks maybe if I do a 23andMe genetically, I can find something that she's susceptible to, right? And so then he does that, and then we have the big reveal. That creates some layers of depth there emotionally, that we can get the audience behind the character.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Oh, that's all good.
Okay, so I guess what we need to figure out now is if they're doing this test to figure out something about the mom or the parent's illness, and they find out that there's something else, we need to somehow get to an end, which is either more knowledge of this person, more knowledge of the cloning process, or I guess the the curing of the parent. So, Mr. Calhoun, when creating a story, when you have the concept and you have a rough idea of kind of what you're going to start poking around in, how early on do you try to work out the ending to know what to get to?
Yeah, pretty early. I'll do like a macro arc off the theme, right? So I'll look at what the theme is. What am I trying to prove? What am I trying to disprove? How do I create an arc with that through the character? And how do I have that character change, right? Because characters have to change throughout the arc. And a lot of the misunderstandings with characters is people think, oh, a character has to grow. They have to become better. Or or if your character doesn't change, and they become worse, but they just have to change. And so we're going to put them on an arc of that. And even if the change in the character is that they're a terrible person, but they don't realize it, and at the end of the story, they come to understand that they're a terrible person, but they don't change, that is still growth of a character. Mm-hmm. So I would say, how do we have this character? What do we want to say? And what do we want to explore through this character? Do we want to explore that his sense of self is beyond anything that anybody realizes? I mean, do we want to explore that we are all part alien? I mean, do we want to explore that he's evolving in a way that future people can? I mean, do we want to explore that being born into a particular family does not mean that's who you are? You know, I mean, are we going to discover that he's a descendant genetically of a serial killer and he's a killer himself? I mean, where do we want to go with it?
That idea crossed my mind as we were having this conversation, is that he's somehow, his genetic material was taken from someone who is considered in the wide public eye a bad person and has to deal with that. Because more and more it feels like we're moving away from the out and out, like, I'm part alien sci-fi stuff, and more like the circumstances of me coming to be are not necessarily shaping who I will be.
Well, it's up to you. I mean,
yeah,
you can stick with the alien thing if you want. This is your concept. If you want to stick with the alien thing, then I would just tweak it to, what is being human then at that point, right? Is being human a biological thing? Is being human a spiritual thing? Or is being human a type of, is humanity beyond all of those things and it's an ideal, right? So you can explore it that way.
Zach, what are you feeling?
Well, I like the idea of putting a theme into something. I don't think it's ever crossed my mind when coming up with a story. So now I'm like really searching for a heart of this. I like the idea of it being like a serial killer, although I don't know why that would come into play. I do like the idea of an alien, although I don't really like going down the story of like what it means to be a human. So I like it being a clone. I don't know if they have to be like a bad person, but I like there being like maybe a bunch of them or something. And then maybe exploring the idea of what it means to be an individual. I think that's something that when you leave high school, you're always worried about. It's like, am I popular? Am I a poser? Like, what am I?
That's good.
So I like the idea of maybe searching individuality. So I think that's cool, and I don't really know how to go into that just yet, but I like that. And now that I'm thinking of theme, I think it's going to change a lot of my storytelling techniques. So I'm really learning a lot. So I'm really happy with today's episode.
No, I like the idea you have there of individuality. It's really really smart, especially when it comes to high school life. I think that's great.
Yeah. But now trying to wrap like a finale or trying to figure out what we can go to with that is, I guess, the next challenge.
Yeah.
Dylan, what do you see here?
So I'm seeing the finale as like they finally get to wherever this. I'm seeing him as like the product of some sort of experiment, and the experiment was just cut short. Someone came in and was like, "You're doing what?" No, no, you got to put all these kids, like, you got to get, these are children. So I'm seeing the reveal is like kind of just not an anticlimax, but kind of like a realization that it really had no bearing on you whatsoever beyond where you came from, and everything you've done has been you, and kind of reaffirming, maybe throughout the story, he's having this crisis of consciousness where they keep getting more breadcrumbs about what's been going on, and maybe running into other versions of himself and being like, shouldn't I be turning out like that? And then they get to the end and it's like, you turned out exactly as you were supposed to. Like,
yeah,
go take care of your mom. Like,
so that's good. Let's build in some stakes now. So we have the stakes of his mother's life, right? So we have that. That's good. That's a ticking time clock. So ticking time clocks are great because we can accelerate it whenever we need to, especially when the story starts to slow down. Mom can collapse, ends up in the hospital. Story starts to pick up. Stakes go higher. So that works. The other thing we should look at is adding more conflict. So, and by upping the stakes that way, are the clones being killed off? Are the clones being captured? Are the clones being kidnapped? We start asking ourselves these questions. Does he wake up in another clone's bed in a different part of the country, in the different part of the world? So you start really trying to take a different approach, because we don't want to be Orphan Black, right? We don't want to be that. So we want to be something original. So really looking at, okay, what is different? What can we start creating unique here?
Wait, what is Orphan Black?
Orphan Black is a show that came out by, I believe, 6-7 years ago about a woman that discovers she is a clone and starts finding all the other clones, and then discovers that they're part of a research program. And it's the same actress plays all the characters. She won a Golden Globe or an Emmy or something.
She won something for it.
Yeah, very good show. So we want to make sure that we're not running into that. So then you just do a unique approach to it.
Yeah.
I'm into that. I like clones that are being used for like medical purposes, like ones that are being used to like harvest organs from for some reason, because I think that there is like a big thing about that. Like if we could use clones to make more organs, I think that'd be one thing that people would be okay with cloning for some reason, which scares the crap out of me. But and I think it also maybe touches into, it doesn't really matter where you come from, it's the life that you live, I guess, which is the theme that you could be explored there.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Nope.
Well, I was going to say, it looks like our first mini arc is getting to the DNA test, right? It's finding out who this kid is, finding out about their parents, finding out about the high school, finding out, I guess, how boring their life is at first. Because that's usually one of those arcs where it's like, oh, I'm just like everybody else, you know, and then it turns out that you are. Because I think that might be kind of a cool reveal where they just feel that they're just like a number in the high school, and then it turns out that they're a clone.
You're literally a number somewhere, and then it turns out it's not important.
I think that's a really good idea. So when we start looking that way, we also start looking at visual subtext. So then I would start building out the intro scene where the kids are walking through school and they all kind of walking the same way. They're all generalized, dressed in the same way. Or if you want to have him numbered like a clone, then you could have him running track with a number on in a group of a bunch of other kids that have the same number on. So we start visually thinking, how do we start showing this story subtextually? And that works as well. I like the body harvesting thing. It's been done a few times.
Yeah.
So I would say, how do we put a twist on that? Maybe it's not organ harvesting. Maybe they're doing something crazier. Maybe they're transferring minds. Maybe they're transferring souls. You know, I mean, maybe he's a younger clone of an older man who's going to take his body over. I mean, there's different aspects you can look into there.
It was a failed immortality test.
Yeah.
Where
something like that.
And it's just like, what are we going to do with all these clones? It's like, well, they're people. Find them families and just don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's like everybody wants to adopt, so just sell them. Cool. Good.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
something like that. It could be something else. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it. So
Okay.
Is there an agency hunting these kids down once their DNA enters the system? Like it's like we got another hit in rural Iowa, and then that's kind of like the the outer world intrudes on his home life.
Yeah, I think building the stakes is essential. So upping the conflict is good. And then talking about Act 1, Act 1 is always life as we know it. So Act 1 is teaching the viewer, the audience, what this character's life is, who they are, what their struggles are. And then the inciting incident, which usually comes in around 10 minutes, is like, hey, here's this cool thing that you should probably go do. And then the characters inevitably say, no, I don't want to do that. And the reason why they deny that call, they refuse the call of action, is because nobody wants change. Nobody likes change. So we put that in there to make the character even more human, so that eventually by the end of Act 3 or by the end of Act 1, they're like, yes, let's go do this crazy thing.
All right, so I do like the sick parent thing, so we can put that in there. And then I'm assuming that if they have one parent, they don't know who the other parent is. And if the current parent, the only remaining parent, dies, then they will have to go to a different school to graduate. And then that would be that, that thing. It's like, I don't really want to do this, whatever. And I guess at some point we got to figure out how to make this kid get the DNA test, which, I guess once again is to look for a cure for the sick mom.
Yeah.
Right.
To find out any genetic markers they may be predisposed towards.
So he sent it out way before the film even started. I would come into it where he had already paid for it weeks ago and then gets the letter in the mail.
Oh, okay, cool.
We come into it that way. So that way we're not wasting time. We're not wasting space. This is part of the coming in late, leaving early part of storytelling. So he had already done it before the movie even started. He comes home, mom's coughing up blood, or she's passed out on the floor, or whatever, or can't breathe, or she's jaundiced, whatever disease you want to give her. And then he gets the letter, the envelope, opens it, and then it says, not applicable. And then he calls them up and like, what do you mean? This is ridiculous. What'd you have? Like, did you swap it with a dog? Like what happened? And they're fervent. Or he could be one of the kids that sent it to like 3 different types. Like maybe he's an overachiever. So he sent it to like 3 different ones. And so they all keep saying not applicable. Right. So now we show the kid has really done his due diligence, doesn't know what the hell is going on. And then maybe somebody comes for him.
Yeah, I like the not applicable thing. So I'm assuming that he gets a DNA test to see if he can give a blood transfusion or whatever or just any kind of
bone marrow.
Yeah, just anything. Okay. And then instead of it coming back with any information, they all just say not applicable. I think that's really cool. And even some of his friends got their DNA test back, and all of theirs are just normal DNA tests.
Right.
And then I guess now someone is either contacting him because of his queries, right? And so that, I guess that's going to be the end of our Act 1, right? Which is somebody contacting him about the DNA testing because they need to talk to him about something.
I would roll it progressively through Act 1. So he gets a phone call, and I would do it in weird ways. Like he opens up the letter, and as soon as he opens up the letter, the phone rings. Right. And it's like this odd timing that's unnatural. And it kind of gets the audience thinking, what the hell's going on? Right. Or they know who he is before he knows who he is. Make it weird, make it kind of stand out. So it's unnatural. And then it's the visitation, right? The surprise visitation.
Yeah.
And then by the end of Act 1, he's got to leave because somebody tried breaking into the house or something weird happened, so that we are like actively going out onto the adventure.
Yeah.
Now, would the remaining parent have to perish in Act 1 for most of this to happen, because if there's any kind of information they're going to get from this DNA test, which is obviously not going to come out proper, and the kid's leaving or whatever, would it be an inciting moment for the last parent to die?
I don't believe in that's called fridging. I don't like fridging. So fridging is when you have a hero go on a journey because a woman in his life died or was killed.
Yeah.
And it comes from the old comic books where a superhero comes home and he finds his wife dead in a fridge, right? And now he must go on an adventure. So I don't want to fridge her. I would actually keep her alive and really prolong it so that the stakes stay there. The ticking time bomb is still going. The stakes are up. And then you can bring in the villains to really take advantage of her delicate state. What? And then from there, you can look at working in things like maybe his father's not actually dead. Maybe his father works for the, so you can really work in more mystery and have fun with it.
You've got the conflict as well of like, well, I got to run, but my mom's in the hospital and is probably going to die. But if I go there, they know where to find me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Now, if the first act is life as we know it, what would you call the second act?
Yeah, Act 2 is conflict and stakes. So it's consistently every plot point you are upping the stakes. Things are getting more and more severe. And so what it is like if you break Act 2 into two different acts itself, so like 2A and 2B, if you want to do it that way, like 2A is the hero trying to solve the problem with the skill set that he has and failing. So then there's what we call at the midpoint of Act 2 is what we call the midpoint death. The midpoint death, it is a point in the character's journey where he is at his absolute worst and he has utterly failed. And then he has to pick himself up and learn from his mistakes or learn a new skill or something that will allow him, or a new piece of information that will allow him to now tackle the problems from a new direction.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what if the agency that's coming to get him is full of a bunch of hymns?
Now, that's really interesting. I love that twist.
So that could be kind of cool. And then if, say that he's trying to, in the 2A part, if he's trying to solve this and he finally catches one of these people and it's like, oh, it's another one of me. I also had a weird idea that the person in charge of all of this, which is the dad, I guess his dad, which is also him, which would be kind of weird and gross.
No, I think this is really
prime.
good. I love the direction where you're going, because what if we loop back to Dylan's idea of it being aliens and that he is embedded in an alien family in order to learn about human existence?
Oh, like he makes a bunch of clones, puts them with different human families to see how humans grow. Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, they're doing recon on the human existence, right? And so then that loops back into your theme of what is it to be human, right? Now, are the intentions of the clone dad the recon to learn human weaknesses to manipulate mankind? Now it's nefarious.
Yeah,
right?
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I like that a lot. Okay, so now what do you call this is actually turning into a better story than I gave Dylan credit for. So what would what would you call the Act 3? If Act 2 is conflict and stakes, what is Act 3?
It's all about resolution, right? And it's not just resolution of the main plot. It's resolution of the character's development. It's resolution of your subplots. It's total resolution. And a resolution, as David Mamet says, is expected yet surprising. So what that means is it's going to end in a way that we understand it should have ended, but still surprising. I don't like endings where they go for the artistic ending because they think it's artistic, but secretly they just don't want to commit to the ending.
Yeah.
Because that ruins a film. You can ruin a decent film with a really bad ending, and I have seen it happen. So it's definitely working in that character's arc thematically for that satisfying conclusion.
Okay. So in Act 2, if we're going to go with conflicting stakes, and we're going to have to work in some subplots here just to make this interesting, which,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm not sure if we can do that right now. But
No.
we have, in the 2B area, what are some things that you like to see in that part of the film, which is at the end? What are some things you like to see the hero go through?
I like to see the hero really get knocked down, but usually in 2B, we also start to see the heart plot really start to play into helping the hero heal to prepare for the final battle.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be essential then where we're building in the heart plot, whether the heart plot is him and his mom, whether the heart plot is him and his best friend, or if you want to, be the traditional, he's got a love interest, which is not necessary. But if you want to work that in there, it's the heart plot that way. I just wouldn't use like a female clone version of himself because that get weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I actually was thinking, what if he has like a letter from his mom that she's like, open this when you graduate, and he thinks it's just going to be a love, like,
money.
I love you, money, and then it turns out it's like her confessing everything, like, I'm not, I wanted to tell you in person you're adopted, but you're not just adopted, I got you from, and it just kind of goes through that, and then it goes, but, and then it's in like new text, or it's like in like fresher ink or something. It's like, I've watched you grow, and you are more than.
I would go beyond a letter and have the intimacy of the conversation. Okay. But the other thing I would add caution to, and this is what I see with some films, is unearned knowledge, which can come across as making your character weak. So when your character goes through all of this conflict, survives, gets better, grows, goes through even bigger conflict and grows, he or they need to earn the knowledge and skill that they have. You never want it to just be handed to them, because if it's just handed to them, they have not earned it, and then it kind of injustifies their struggle, right? Yeah. Because think back of yourself, your own path, your own journey, because we're all on our own journey, right? You've earned what you've gone through. Well, I hope. You could be a trust fund kid, but like you've earned the struggle you've gone through, and so by making our character earn it, then that keeps the audience and the reader behind them. So if you're going to have a moment like that, it's fine, but he has to make sure that he has earned that, he has saved his mom, right? And then she's on the recovery, and then she says, "Oh, by BT dubs, your dad's an alien, lols," and then go from there.
Okay, Dylan, how do you think is the way we can save the mom?
I mean, it depends. If we're going sci-fi on this, you'd somehow pull one over on the people who are causing this, and make a deal where it's like, hey, if you've got all this genetic stuff, my mom's got a congenial disease, fix her up and I won't like go public with this or something. I feel like they need to like kind of use the knowledge they've gained over the course of the story to leverage their triumph on behalf of their mom.
Now, Mr. Calhoun, is there anything in the mom being a earlier version of the clone?
It's interesting.
I don't know how to wrap any of this up.
I'm not against it. I mean, I would put him in a moral dilemma. So, like, does he have to use his own bone marrow to save his mom, but it might kill him? And then if that's the way it is, does he decide to take one of his brothers to do it? Now he's in a moral dilemma. Now he has to kill to save his mom. So, again, upping the stakes and driving the conflict.
Yeah, I like the bone marrow. So we're going to stick that in there somewhere, because I like him having to decide whether he needs to sacrifice himself or kill somebody else and bring them. I think that's cool.
Right, because that's part of humanity.
Yeah. And then let's see, we have to get in the total resolution. The mom is going to get cured by some sort of bone marrow transplant. The main character is going to be okay with the fact that he's a clone because he is still an individual and he still gets to go to college and live his own life. The dad is an alien and I guess gets the information that they need from humanity. Dylan, what are some things you want to see in this last part here before we wrap up the show?
I really like that conflict idea of, it's like, do I sacrifice myself or do I kidnap another version of myself and do that? I want some sort of closure on the alien plot. I like the fact, I like that it's aliens running this entire thing to learn about humanity. But I think there needs to be something in that resolution that deals with that.
Right.
And if it's thrown in too late, it's going to feel like a swerve at the last minute.
Yeah. Does he kill it? Does he kill his father and take his place? Does he shut down the entire program? You know, and then you leave it open for a sequel. There's a lot. Does he make a dirty deal with his father? I mean, there's a lot of different avenues you could go thematically. So you can work with it.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, well, we're gonna work on this offline. If you don't know, we have a live show on Tuesdays called Twitching Upstream, where we take these concepts and then work on them even further, and we put more characters into them, we put more scenes into them, and then Dylan starts working out the screenplays so that eventually we can have like a table reading or something. But either way, that has been our show. Thank you so much for hanging out and making another weird but great project for some nobodies to work on, and something else that I can make Dylan write a lot more. We came up with a new theme, which is this interesting alien clone debacle about a high school kid that started out from just a weird concept, which is an ancestry abnormality. If you want to check out the progress of this, you can always go to our website, which is somenobodies.com. We do have a Patreon also, some people that do help out via Patreon. Like I said, Scott Curtis with Behind the Bits, listener app at The Greatest Podcast app, Tanya Sheck, Sarah Takachik. You have Mick Manhattan at the Scene Snobs. You have Jeff Dwoskin over at Crossing the Streams. But honestly, just check out anything. We appreciate it. All we're really trying to do is create some content and just make people smile by making up weird new shows. If you have any time at all and you're still paying attention, which I do appreciate, please go check out The Guide to Every Screenwriter, which is written by Mr. Geoffrey Calhoun. It's an amazing book that now Dylan and I are going to reference a lot more often because it is the most interesting and best way to get your story written properly. And also, if you're into podcasts and you are on Listener app, go check out The Successful Screenwriter. It is a very cool way to find some movies that you might not have heard of and get them broken down by very interesting and very educated people that are way smarter than we are. Mr. Calhoun, thank you so much for any of your time. Thank you so much for your knowledge. We have honestly grown 100-fold just in this last conversation. So, do you want to say anything to anybody that's watching this on Pod TV?
Oh, you're referring to me.
You're on the big screen.
The Guide for Every Screenwriter. You can also go to thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com because we have a lot of resources for you on there. I have free screenplays from Hollywood scripts that you can read, courses, recommended screenplay contests, videos, all for free access just for you guys.
Awesome.
Right on.
Yeah, and once again, thank you for your time. I know that this is a lengthy show, but we really appreciate it, and it makes us better. So thank you. For anybody out there, thank you very much for your attention. If you know, I crave it. I am an attention hog, and I need it, and thank you very much. Dylan, my very best friend, thank you very much for letting me talk at you and sometimes responding to some of my text messages. I appreciate it. Everybody out there, please check out our stuff. Send us any information. Ask us any question. We do love you guys very much. Thank you very I have been Zach, he's been Dylan, and you have been great. Thank you. Bye.
Take it easy out there, everybody.